to the beginning. All right. So does this one, is this going to run out, is it?
It might, yeah, but we'll see what happens.
We'll just go up to whatever, because then I'll do a full, including the close. We can do that next week. But
yeah.
Okay, so I'll just start. So just switch this off. All right, so, okay, hello everyone. My name is Sophie and I'd like to welcome you to my Breathe for Life webinar. I will be covering how to overcome stressful breathing and teach you how to breathe with ease. Okay, so this one doesn't bring it up one at a time.
No, because what you at the moment you're in display. You're not in display mode.
Oh, okay. So
right?
how do I do
that?
that?
You haven't actually run the. All you're doing is you've got it open, but you've got to run the slideshow.
Oh, okay.
So and then you'd use your page up and page down to go through slides. Because if you
and how do you do that?
You haven't got.
Which one's that?
Let me just exit full screen and see what it does.
Maybe
yeah, no, you're running it, but you're right. There's no animations in it. It's not running the animations for you.
So what about chat, audio options, video settings?
No, it's the way it's actually picking up the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay.
Right, so it's not like if you normally run it, but because you're sharing screens and stuff, some of them don't actually allow animations to run. So It might be that you'd have to. So, for example, what would normally happen? You'd have just a heading and then you'd bring up line by line.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it might be that what you've got to do is just create pages for each line. Right? If we were using Zoom, for example.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
So it's a matter, or you just talk to all of these points individually anyway.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, so this webinar is for you if you're currently an asthmatic, or maybe you care for an asthmatic, someone in your family, or perhaps you're a school teacher. This webinar is also for you if you suffer panic attacks. That's quite common for asthmatics to experience panic attacks. They're not as life-threatening as an asthma attack, however, they are terrifying. Have you had the experience that you feel like you cannot breathe during a panic attack and then panic even more? You can have a panic attack for different reasons, but a common reason for asthmatics is if they find themselves without their ventilator. How many of you can relate to the fear and panic that sets in when you've forgotten or misplaced your ventilator? It might be that you don't need to use it at that moment, but you've had life-threatening attacks, and some of you have ended up in emergency because of your asthma. So without your ventilator, understandably, you start to feel stressed and anxious. Let me ask you something that I ask every asthmatic. How would you describe what it's like for you when you're struggling to breathe in a state of panic? Some of my asthma clients have described it as having a plastic bag wrapped over their head. Can you relate to that claustrophobic feeling? Others describe it as trying to breathe through a straw, or someone is sitting on their chest. Let me ask you another question. Are you sick and tired of the anxiety, emotional stress, and the physical exhaustion of having to continuously experience stressful breathing? Well, stick around, because in this webinar, I'm going to show you how you can overcome stressful breathing. I will teach you techniques that will improve your breathing, and for instances when you are without your ventilator, how you can remain calm until you do get to your ventilator. I must point out at this stage that I cannot help you in regards to reducing your medication, and I do not recommend you adjust your medication. Only your specialist can do that. But I can help you learn some simple but very effective techniques that will help alleviate the stress and anxiety that you so often feel. How many of you feel your neck and chest is uncomfortably tight? How often do you want to take a deep breath, but it feels like someone has their hands gripped around your throat and a belt is tightly fastened around your ribcage? Well, I'm going to show you a few things that you can do to help release the restriction and tightness of your whole upper body. So many asthmatics complain to me that they not only suffer asthma and panic attacks, but they also struggle with their everyday breathing and feel that they are shallow breathers. They're frustrated at the inability to breathe normally. Breath is essential to life, and it is your birthright to breathe fully and freely. If you struggle with your breathing, wouldn't it be life-changing if you could breathe without stress or strain? Can you imagine how it would feel if you were able to breathe with ease? It is something everyone should be able to do, including asthmatics. In this webinar, you will find out how other asthmatics have learned how to control their breathing muscles, feel confident with their overall breathing, and be able to breathe in a natural and relaxed manner. So what led me to my breathing journey? Well, I started martial arts training at the age of 14, and I instantly became fascinated with breathing techniques and started using them within my training. I began exploring all different breathing methods like yoga and Tai Chi and so on. There's an old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and that certainly happened to me. I didn't necessarily find breathing teachers, but people who were very passionate about breathing within their field, for example, yoga teachers or singing teachers and so on, and I was really inspired by their passion. So how the breathing training program developed was clients actually asked me to help them breathe better when I worked at health retreats. I mean, I just thought everybody could breathe properly, but I had one person after another coming up and asking me, how do you breathe better? How can you improve? How can I improve my breathing? And so my program started slowly but surely, and it developed as a result of what I learned from my students, my breathing teachers, my own personal journey, and also research I've done with respiratory specialists, and measuring devices has also played an important part, which I'll discuss a bit later on. So here's what I've done. I wrote a book. It was published 17 years ago, and it's still available on Amazon.com. It looks like I've got two books, but the one on the left is from my Australian publisher and the one on the right is from my American publisher. After my book came out, there was a lot of interest because it was something different. So I had quite a few articles written about me. I ended up on TV talkback shows, radio, and so on. Here are some more articles. And over the years, I've been asked to write a lot of articles. The one on the left was when, at the time I was living in England, and the one on the right was when I was living in New York. I lived there for quite a while, and I was running courses for stressed out New Yorkers, but I did also for a lot of performers like dancers and people who were performing on Broadway and so on. Trained thousands of people in different countries. I've created different courses, basic, intermediate, advanced, adults, and also for children. Done a lot of specialised courses. The first one I ever did was for panic attacks, and that led me to running a course for asthmatics, because they asked me, a lot of asthmatics came to that course for panic attacks and so on. And then I, as you can see, a lot of different areas. Now, when I put my book together, I wanted it to be approved by respiratory experts just to make sure it was physiologically sound, and I had about three of them at the time, and then I was looking around for one more, and there's such a thing as a respiratory angel. It's Chinmoy Chow. She was amazing. Now, she did test me, I might add. She did say to me, look, she had a colleague, he had struggled with his breathing for years. She wanted me to give him a breathing session. Well, obviously he was happy, because when she came back to me after my session with him, she said not only would she critique my book, but she actually offered to write my foreword. So this is part of the foreword, which says Sophie's breathing techniques are physiologically sound. Breathe for Life lets you get in touch with your breathing, respiratory muscles, and rib cage. This is Karen Fisher. She's a nutritionist, and she had some training with me and was so happy with the breathing that she wanted to write a chapter. And she says, here I feel really strongly about sharing with you the breathing techniques that Sophie has taught me, as I've experienced amazing benefits for incorporating into my life. And together we worked on making sure that the chapter was, you know, she included my training, but we worked together to put it together. Okay, so the World Health Organization estimates that 235 million people suffer from asthma. It's probably more than that. This would be people who are registered. And they also state that asthma is the most common chronic disease amongst children, which, you know, is really, really sad for me. When I first learned about that many, many years ago, I actually created a course because it really upset me to think that children actually have to suffer with their breathing. So it's a fun course for them, and yeah, they learn to become friends with their breathing. And they also state that it's a worldwide problem and that it creates a substantial burden to individuals, families, and possibly restricting individuals' activities for a lifetime, which, you know, if you think about it, a whole lifetime is not a good thought. So my question to you is, do you want to spend the rest of your life struggling to breathe? Now, you might say to me, understandably, well, which I get all the time, I've been an asthmatic for a long time. Is it possible for me to improve my breathing? And my answer to that is yes, yes, and yes. So my question to you is, are you ready to start improving your breathing right now, letting go of your stressful breathing and start your relaxation breathing? I'm assuming you're going to say yes, so let's get started. So there are 3 steps to improving your breathing. First one is assessing your breathing. Now, assessing your breathing is so important that decades later, I'm still doing it. It's important for a number of reasons, which I'll discuss. So that's the first thing. Second is basic breathing techniques. Everybody needs to know basic breathing techniques. It doesn't matter what you do. So we're going to cover, we're just going to do some very basic training today. And thirdly, the great thing is once you've learnt your basic breathing techniques, then you can start applying your breathing skills to all different areas. So we'll look at that as well. Now, before we start, some of you have never had any breathing training before. So I'd like to welcome you to your breathing journey. I remember when my instructor first introduced me to my very first form of good quality breathing. So for some of you, this is going to be your first. So I wish you all the best with your breathing training. So we're going to start with assessing your natural breathing. This is just the kind of breathing you do all day, every day. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. Now, if you want, you can write down the answers, but really what I'm after is the very first thing that comes to your head. So try not to think about it too much. Okay, so do you breathe through your nose or mouth? Do you yawn throughout the day, the evening, or the whole day? Do you feel like you can't get enough air in or out? Do you sigh regularly? Do you feel like your breathing is stressed or relaxed? On your assessment scale of 1 to 10, 1 being poor, 10 being excellent, how would you assess your breathing? Now, what we're going to do is take a good quality breath. So I'd like you to place one hand on the top of your chest and one on your belly button. Now, just take a few, what you consider to be your best quality breaths. Just take a really deep breath in and a really deep breath out. Take 2 or 3. Now, if you get dizzy, it means you're pushing too hard, so you can just stop and go back to normal. But you only need 2 or 3 for this assessment. All right, so my first question is, when you take your best quality breath, which hand or area moves the most? Now, this is a very important question. When you take a breath in, does your belly button move away from your spine or towards your spine? And the same when you exhale. When you breathe out, what direction is your belly button going? You need to know this because for a lot of people who have dysfunctional breathing, the answer to this will tell you a lot. Does your chest drop when you breathe out? Do your shoulders move when you breathe in? Do your shoulders drop when you breathe out? Okay, is your breath synchronized with the body moving? So what I mean by that is when you take a breath in and the movement stops, are you still breathing or has your breath stopped before your body's moving? Okay, a few more questions. Oops, sorry. So no previous. Okay. Do you breathe overall with ease when you take your best quality breath, or do you struggle? Is your chest area relaxed or tight? How does your breath sound? How is the flow of your breath? How is your posture? And ask yourself the following: is your breath erratic or smooth? Another very important question is, how does your inhalation compare to your exhalation? How long can you breathe in or out for? And on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give yourself? Now, just to let you know, on average, when I check people's breathing, on average, they can only breathe in for 2 to 4 seconds and out for 4 to 6. So that's not good timings. Really, the minimum you should be able to breathe in for 10 solid seconds at the very minimum if you're a good quality breather. So on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you give yourself? 1 being poor. So assessments are very important because it lets you know what's going on with your breathing, and also giving yourself breath checks throughout the day is another good, very important part of your training, and essential to know because they will indicate with your health. What they've found is people have some kind of problems with their health or even diseases, their breathing actually starts to change. So by keeping an eye on your breathing, you're actually giving yourself a very important check. So it's something that you should always do, and I still do it decades later. Sorry, I don't know what happened there.
It's okay.
Hang on. Let me go back. Okay, from current slide. Okay, so this is back to Chinmoy, who is part of her forward wrote there. Basically what she's saying, a lot of people have abnormal breathing patterns and behaviours unaware of it, and explained why, like, for example, trauma, tragedy, loss of loved ones, emotional disturbance. So something like an asthma attack or a panic attack can start changing the way you breathe. But the good thing is, which is what I've highlighted, is she also says these unhealthy habits can be broken and reversed, and breathing is a trainable act. So this is what I call your mindset when it comes to breathing. Basically, when I'll tell you about the very first asthmatic that came to me. At the time, I had never done an asthmatic. This was in the very early stages of forming my program, my training. And she said to me, you know, can you teach me how to breathe? And I remember thinking to myself, half of me said, well, no, I can't train an asthmatic because they have got problems with their breathing. But the other half of me that says, you know, we all have a blueprint of how to breathe properly. What we've done is, as Chinmoy just mentioned, we've interfered with that path of good quality breathing. So when she was asking me, I obviously had a puzzled look on my face because she's pleaded with me. She said, look, for my whole life, I've never known how to take a good breath. She said, even if I can just breathe a fraction of what you do, I would be happy. So I said to her, look, I can't guarantee you anything. I said, but you know what? I'll teach you the basics like I teach anybody else. We went through the steps, and after her training finished, I asked her to take a really good quality breath. And it was so beautiful. It flowed and went on for so long. It was so relaxed that at the end of her breath, her inhale and exhale, tears were actually coming out of her eyes. And then, of course, I started crying because I'm softened too. And she just looked at me and said, she has never been able to take that breath. So what happened was she then started sending all the asthmatics that she knew. And slowly, I gained confidence, basically. And I realised that, you know, trying to tell an asthmatic that you can't breathe is like trying to say, you know, learn how to breathe is like telling them you can't learn how to drive a car. Everybody has the ability to learn how to take a good quality breath. So whilst you have your asthma and you have to stay with your specialist about that, you do have the ability to actually control all your breathing muscles just like anybody else who does not have a respiratory problem. So just keep that in mind as we progress through this training. All right, so I'm just going to just give you an overview in this next training section, and you won't grasp everything, but even if you grasp a small percentage of it, you're still going to get some improvement. So here's an overview of what you need in order to improve your breathing. You have to understand about breathing muscles, about breathing in out of your nose and mouth, and when is the right time to do that, the direction of your breath and body. You need to know how to regulate your inhale and your exhale, synchronize your breath with the movement, breathing appropriately according to the demand, the flow of the breath, the volume of the breath, and your posture. These are all important things. Okay, now let me just say at this point, I have trained 5-year-olds to do this all the way up to 85-year-olds. So everyone can learn this. So hopefully you don't think it's overwhelming, but so let's begin. There's 4 stages to a complete breath. Everyone knows about the inhale and the exhale, but did you know there was actually 2 stages that have changeover? So if you have a look here on the screen, let's say that's your inhale. And then over here is number 2, the changeover from your exhale to inhale. So basically, it's not abrupt. You're not just breathing in and then out. You're breathing in, then gradual changeover, and then you breathe out, and then there's a changeover after your exhale. And they've actually found people, for example, with heart problems, don't do the changeover. So it's very important to have these 4 stages of breathing. Now, there's 2 types of breathing training. One is internal, which is what we're covering today, and then the other is the external, which you all know as being, exercise. So how you determine it is, for example, if your body is still and you're using your breathing muscles to draw the air in, that's internal breathing training. You can have gentle movements and still be doing internal breathing training. For example, Tai Chi, some forms of yoga, like gentle yoga, you could classify. External would be riding your bike, running, sports, and so on. So a combination would be something like, for example, martial arts. It has a lot of both, certain types of yoga and so on. So you need both. To be an all-rounder breather, you actually need to do internal breathing training and external breathing training. Now, in basic physiology, there's 2 types of breathing. One is upper chest and the other is diaphragmatic. So see here in the diagram, I've got 3 zones. So you've got your upper, where your rib cage is, and your abdominal section. So continuing on with that, upper chest is poor quality, which is like erratic breathing. And then you've got diaphragmatic, which is your good quality, and that's when your breathing is smooth. Now, one thing I noticed with every single person who was a good quality breather is that they all predominantly use their diaphragm when they breathe in and or out. So why do I say and or out? So the reason is because, for example, a singer can have an absolutely fantastic exhalation, but they have a very poor quality inhalation, and a lot of them gasp. And what happens is they keep developing their exhale, but then their inhalation is neglected and they become really out of balance. So they come to see me because they've gotten to a point where balance is affecting them, out of balance, sorry. So then we work a lot on improving their inhale, and we can also do a bit of work on their exhale, but that way they become a much more balanced breather. All right, so remember I mentioned Chinmoy, when I went to the University of Sydney, they got me on their what's called a capnograph. It measures your breathing. So this is my breathing here. And remember I spoke about erratic breathing and smooth breathing. So here we have good quality breathing. So you can see how it's nice and smooth. And then here, of course, is the erratic breathing. It's just all over the place. So obviously if you're having a panic attack or an asthma attack or really stressed, this is what's going on in your body. So it's quite interesting to see visually what's actually happening on the inside. I also went there and I stayed at their sleep lab overnight, and they put all sorts of things, test and watched what my breathing was doing when I sleep. So it's quite fascinating stuff. And the European Respiratory Society has said that breathing control exercises have been used as a treatment for anxiety and panic. And they also say that the hyperventilation has been associated with asthma. So people who have asthma tend to hyperventilate a lot. It's become a habit. So this is a similar machine to what I showed you before, but it's a really, really important one. And for me, it actually changed the direction on how I used to teach. So it looks a bit complicated. I'm just going to simplify it. So what I want to just explain here is, remember I said there was 4 stages to good quality breathing. So if you have a look on the left here, let's just for the moment just accept that this measures your breathing, okay? That the level should be, say, around up here at 5. It's a healthy breath. So when I did my good quality breathing, there was quite a good number here. And then over here, the second one, that's actually a good quality inhalation, exhalation, but I didn't do the 2 in between stages, the handovers, the changeovers. So what I did was I then went back to doing the 4-stage breathing here. And then I thought, wonder what would happen if I started hyperventilating and doing erratic breathing. And as you can see, that's that section here. So look how the carbon dioxide here, oops, drops, okay? Now, this is the interesting thing. If you have a look back to here, I've actually put there, that's only 6 seconds. So when I was hyperventilating, I then changed back to the 4-stage breathing, and look how the breathing came back to normal. So why this was really important for me to actually visualize was because it occurred to me that in order to change the kind of breath you have, you actually don't need to go and sit in a quiet corner for 20 minutes and change the way you breathe. It actually can happen in a matter of seconds. So what that means for you, if you're at work, for example, and all of a sudden you start feeling that because of stress at work or whatever the reason, your breathing's starting to become erratic or stressful, you can change from a poor quality breath to a good quality breath in a matter of seconds, and no one even needs to know what you're doing. So this is a very important thing to remember. Also, this understanding is very important when it comes, for example, to exercising. Most people who are unfit and get breathless are breathing that way when they exercise. Mm-hmm. Okay, so keep this in mind. I'm going to refer back to this. So there's 2 good quality breathing techniques. One is a lengthened, relaxed breath, which is used to fully relax your breathing muscles and deeply relax your whole body. And the other one is short, sharp, powerful breathing. And those breathing techniques are used to strengthen your breathing muscles and also for very demanding tasks. Now, what I've noticed when people are doing breathing training is they tend to either do one or the other. And that's not a good thing. You always want to be doing both. But what's interesting is you can only do power breathing once you're breathing day doing that, because I've actually had asthmatics who can now breathe for a lengthened period of time, even over 30 seconds. So if you follow basics, then you can do it.
So, Sophie, what do you actually mean by continuously breathe for 10 seconds? Because, I mean, I'm obviously breathing now as I'm talking.
Yeah.
So, like, what do you mean by breathing for 10 seconds?
All right, so I'll show you now. So I'll do an exhalation for 10 seconds. I'll put my timer on. I mean, 10 seconds is nothing, but...
Oh, so that's per breath?
Yes. So, like now, if I go... So that was 10 seconds.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
The single breath aspect of it didn't come through.
I'll probably need to clarify that. Yep. Okay, thanks for that.
For the novices and people that aren't in the
game.
They
don't know what that means, because most people can't even imagine breathing over 2 seconds, for example. All right, so I'll clarify that.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you a story that happened to me that I'll never forget.